Megan waits where the shadows lean, under the old apple tree. Moonlight spills on the grass below, her only witness, the breeze.
Such were Ashurst's memories, sitting against the wall among the gorse, on his silver wedding day. At this very spot, where he had laid out the lunch, Megan must have stood outlined against the sky when he had first caught sight of her. Of all queer coincidences. And there moved in him a longing to go down and see again the farm and the orchard, and the meadow of the gypsy bogle. It would not take long, Stella would be an hour yet, perhaps. How well he remembered it all, the little crowning group of pine trees, the steep up grass hill behind. He paused at the farm gate. The low stone house, the yew tree porch, the flowering currants not changed a bit, even the old green chair was out there on the grass under the window, where he had reached up to her that night to take the key. Was it true that 26 years had passed, or had he dreamed and awakened to find Megan waiting for him by the big apple tree? Unconsciously he put up his hand to his grizzled beard and brought himself back to reality. He made his way down through the docks and nettles till he came to the edge, and the old apple tree itself. Unchanged. A little more of the grey-green lichen, a dead branch or two, and for the rest it might have been only last night that he had embraced that mossy trunk after Megan's flight and inhaled its woody savour, while above his head the moonlit blossom had seemed to breathe and live. In that early spring a few buds were showing already, the blackbirds shouting their songs, a cuckoo calling, the sunlight bright and warm. Incredibly the same the chattering trout stream, the narrow pool he had lain in every morning, splashing the water over his flanks and chest, and out there in the wild meadow the beech clump and the stone where the gypsy bogey was supposed to sit. And an ache for lost youth, a hankering, a sense of wasted love and sweetness, gripped Ashurst by the throat. Surely, on this earth of such wild beauty, one was meant to hold rapture to one's heart, as this earth and sky held it. And yet, one could not. He went to the edge of the stream, and looking down at the little pool, thought, youth and spring. What has become of them all, I wonder? And then, in sudden fear of having this memory jarred by human encounter, he went back to the lane, and pensively retraced his steps to the crossroads. Beside the car an old, grey-bearded labourer was leaning on a stick. He broke off at once, as though guilty of disrespect, and touching his hat, prepared to limp on down the lane. Ashurst pointed to the narrow green mound. "Can you tell me what this is?" The old fellow stopped. On his face had come a look as though he were thinking. "Tessa grave," he said. "But why out here?" The old man smiled. "That's a tale, as you may say. And not the first time as I've told it. There's plenty folks asks 'bout that bit o' turf. Maid's grave us calls it, areabouts. There's always a flower on this grave. And tinety so very lonesome. 'Twas a poor soul killed herself." "I see," said Ashurst. "Crossroads burial. I didn't know that custom was kept up." "She was one in an undurred, poor maid. I puts a flower every time I passes. Pretty maid and good maid she was, though they wouldn't bury her up to th church, nor where she wanted to be buried neither." The old labourer paused, and put his hairy, twisted hand flat down on the turf beside the bluebells. "Yes," said Ashurst. In a manner of speaking, the old man went on, "I think as 'twas a love story, though there's no one never knew for sartin. You can't tell what's in a maid's head, but that's what I think about it." He drew his hand along the turf. "I was fond o' that maid, don't know as there was anyone as wasn't fond of her. But she was to loving erted, that's where 'twas, I think. He looked up. And Ashurst, whose lips were trembling in the cover of his beard, murmured again, yes. 'Twas in the spring, 'bout now as tea might be, or a little later blossom time, and we had one o' they young college gentlemen staying at the farm, nice fella too, with his eed in the air. I liked he very well, and I never see nothing between 'em, but to my thinking he turned the maid's fancy. The old man took the pipe out of his mouth, spat, and went on. You see, he went away sudden one day, and never come back. They got his knapsack and bits o' things down there still. That's what stuck in my mind, is never sending for 'em. His name was Ashes, or some then like that. Yes, said Ashurst once more. The old man licked his lips. Never said nothing, but from that day went kind of dazed looking, didn't seem rightly there at all. I never knew a human creature so changed in me life, never. There was another young fella at the farm, Joe Bideford his name were, that was properly sweet on her, too. I guess he used to plague her his attentions. She got to look quite wild. I'd see her sometimes of an evening when I was bringing up the calves, there she'd stand in th orchard, under the big apple tree, looking straight before her. Well, I used to think, I dunno what test that's the matter but looking pitiful, that you be. The old man refit his pipe, and sucked at it reflectively. Yes, said Ashurst. I remembers one day I said to her, what's the matter, Megan? Her name was Megan David, she come from Wales same as her aunt, all Mrs. Narration. Frettin' about something. I says. No, Jim, she says, I'm not frettin'. Yes, you be. I says. No, she says, and to tears come rolling out. Crying, what's that, then? I says. She puts her an over it hurts me, she says, but 'twill soon be better, she says. But if anything should happen to me, Jim, I wants to be buried under this apple tree. I laughed. What's going to happen to you? I says, don't be foolish. No, she says, I won't be foolish. Well, I know what maids are, and I never thought no more about it, till 2 days after that, 'bout 6 in the evening I was coming up the calves, when I see something dark lying in the stream, close to that big apple tree. I says to myself, is that a pig funny place for a pig to get to, and I goes up to it, and I see what 'twas. The old man stopped, his eyes, turned upward, had a bright, suffering look. 'Twas the maid, in a little narrow pool there that's made by the stop pin of a rock where I see the young gentleman bathin' once or twice. Her was lying on her face in the water. There was a plant o' goldicups growing out o' the stone just above her head. And when I come to look at her face, 'twas lovely, beautiful, so calm's a baby's wonderful beautiful it was. When the doctor saw her, he said, her cold'n never done it in that little bit o' water adn't been in an ecstasy. Ah. And judging from her face, that was just how she was. It made me cry, proper beautiful it was. 'Twas June then, but she'd have found a little bit of apple blossom left over somewheres, and stuck it in her hair. That's why I thinks her must have been in an ecstasy, to go to it gay, like that. Why? There wasn't more than a feet and half o' water. But I tell one thing that me disanted, I knew it, and she knew it, and no one will persuade me as 'tasn't he. I told them what she said to me about being buried under apple tree. But I think that turned made it look too much as if she'd had it in her mind deliberate, and so they buried her up there. Parson we had then was very particular, he was. Again the old man drew his hand over the turf. 'Tes wonderful, et seems," he added slowly, "what mates LL do for love. She 'ad a loving at, I guess 'twas broken. But us never knew nothing." He looked up as if for approval of his story, but Ashurst had walked past him as if he were not there. Up on the top of the hill, beyond where he had spread the lunch, over, out of sight, he lay down on his face. So had his virtue been rewarded, and the Cyprian, goddess of love, taken her revenge? And before his eyes, dim with tears, came Megan's face with the sprig of apple blossom in her dark, wet hair. "What did I do that was wrong?" he thought. "What did I do?" But he could not answer. Spring, with its rush of passion, its flowers, and song, the spring in his heart and Megan's. Was it just love seeking a victim? The Greek was right, then the words of the Hippolytus as true today.
For man the heart of love, and gold the gleam of his wings, and all to the spell thereof. Then, when he makes his spring, all life that is wild and young, in mountain and wave and stream, all that of earth is sprung, or breathes in the red sunbeam, yea, and mankind, o'er all a royal throne. Cyprian, Cyprian, is thine alone.
The Greek was right. Megan. Poor little Megan coming over the hill. Megan under the old apple tree waiting and looking. Megan dead, with beauty printed on her. A voice said, "Oh, there you are. Look." Ashurst rose, took his wife's sketch, and stared at it in silence. "Is the foreground right, Frank?" "Yes. But there's something wanting, isn't there?" Ashurst nodded. "Wanting?" "The apple tree, the singing, and the gold." And solemnly he put his lips to her forehead. It was his silver wedding day. 1916.